There's a great text in the third chapter of Proverbs. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones." That's kind of an interesting statement, I think, that the writer of Proverbs makes to us in telling us something about what is the source of good and right. This lesson for this evening is basically what is the foundation of right living. You might just say right away, well, of course it's the Bible. Well, that's not the way many people in our culture, especially here in Southern California, it seems, it's just not the way that many people view this whole thing. It's what I feel like is right, that's right. What I think is wrong, that's wrong. And so I make up my own rules. That's just kind of the culture that we live in. So I want us to think in terms of two things. I want us to think about a person who is not a believer. What is he up against when he begins thinking in terms of ethics? What's right and wrong, morals, what's good and bad? The first place that I ever preached after I got out of college was down in Pensacola, Florida. And there was a young man there, 14 years old. He was a very bright young fellow, and he took a real leadership role. It was a small congregation, about 40 people was all. And he took a real leadership role in this little youth group that we had. A number of years later, in the early 60s, I saw this fellow again. His father had died. I was in Atlanta at the time, and they were going to bury him, this fellow's father. They were going to bury him in Atlanta. They asked me to do the service. Well, while I was visiting with the family, the mother of this young man told me something about some things that had happened to him. He lost interest in church, God, Bible, the whole thing. And she said, "I would really like for you to talk to Bill." Well, Bill and I went out in the car and we started talking. And here's what he told me. He said, "As I grew older and I got into college, I began having doubts. And I began wondering about the existence of God and right and wrong and things like this." And he said, "I talked to some people about this and they didn't believe in God either. And I lost my faith." And then he made a statement that was important, especially important to me. His statement was, "The hardest thing for me to do in making the transition from theism, believing in God, to atheism, not believing in God, was that I had no guide about what was right and wrong." I thought about that a lot of times. That was way back yonder in the early 60s when he made that statement to me. What is the foundation of right living? Well, for you and me, it's the Bible, it's God. But I want us to think in terms of the opposite for a little while, and then we'll talk about God himself. The fundamental problem with this whole business is, what is the source of my decision to do this or not do this? This is right and this is wrong. A fellow by the name of Dennis Prager has an interesting program on the radio sometime, and Dennis Prager was talking about, a little while back, was talking about this topic, and I didn't get this sermon from him, but it's interesting to me that we were thinking right along the same line. You see, if you don't have an external source of ethics and morals, then anything goes. Now, that's literally true. Theft, murder, rape, anything, cheating, dishonesty, anything goes. Because I'm the only judge of that. Now, society might not like my determination, and society may punish me, but within myself, I am my own boss. When I was teaching in Vienna, I had a young lady who, we were discussing this in a class one time, and I had this young lady who, she was not an atheist, but really an agnostic, and she made the statement, I am my own God. That was verbatim, if I remember right. I'm my own God. I make my own decisions. I decide what's right and what's wrong. Well, I knew something about her lifestyle, and she's right. She made her own decisions. And her decision was that before she left Brazil, where she was born and raised, before she left Brazil, she had a boyfriend that she was living with. And then they broke up. And she came to Vienna and she found another boy that she started living with. But she was a very unhappy young lady. And she didn't understand why. She didn't understand why it was that we had to have some kind of authority. In the United States particularly, and in Western countries particularly, I guess, perhaps much more than Eastern countries, the idea of liberty is very, very important. I want freedom. I want my rights. I want my civil rights. And all of this sort of thing. And this has come to the point where what I want becomes law for me. Now, many people will not kill for what they want, but some people will. Many people will not steal for what they want, but some people will. And the people who cheat and steal and lie to get what they want, they feel to some degree justified in that. What is their justification? Well, everybody else has it and I don't. Everybody else can afford it, but I can't. I have the same desire to have it as they have, and they get it and I don't. And so the idea arises many, many times then, well, if it's right for them to have it the way they got it, it's okay for me to have it the way I'll have to get it. The only way I can get it is to cheat. The only way I can get it is to steal. Stop and think. Cheating on examinations is so rampant in our country that the students have even devised electronic ways of cheating. I had a student on an examination. He was cheating and so forth, and he wanted to know if he could redeem himself some way. And I said, okay, here's the thing. You cannot pass this test. You cheated on the test, you get an F on the test. But I will let you make something up. And I gave him some articles to read on the problems of cheating worldwide. I had read these articles. And, oh, you would be amazed at what some college students do to cheat. I mean, they have electronic things of all sorts. They have all kinds of things. Well, you know, texting, that's old stuff, folks. That's old stuff when it comes to cheating. Much more sophisticated than this. Everywhere. One of the most interesting articles in the whole thing referred to the Chinese. The Chinese have a tremendous problem with cheating. And then I said to this young man, you're not married, but let's just suppose that that a doctor tells your mother that she has to have brain surgery. You love your mother very dearly. You want to find the very best doctor you can to do this brain surgery. And just before she goes into the operating room, you find out that surgeon cheated his way through medical school. How would you feel about that? How would you feel about that? Oh, I know how I'd feel about it. I'd kick him out of there. I may do some other things to him too, I don't know, but I would get rid of that fella. Why? Because he cheated. Well, it's just an examination, that's all. Yeah, just an examination, and you're supposed to prepare for it. I know a lady who teaches accounting, and she also has had students who cheat. Here's the thing. An engineer, an attorney, an accountant, if they don't know what they're doing, they can get us in all kinds of trouble. And so the consequences of cheating for those types of people, we all feel. Well, on the other hand, it's just as bad to cheat and not get caught as it is to cheat and get caught. Now, what does that have to do with this foundation of right and wrong? Well, because almost everything, maybe I could say everything, but certainly almost everything that we do is wrapped up in a desire or a need and a rule. If I make the rules, then the rules are very flexible. They can bend, I can bend them just as far as I want to. Now you remember when you were a little kid? We've got one right back there. You remember when you were a little kid? Yeah. Mom and Dad made the rules, didn't they? That's the way it was in my home. Mom and Dad made the rules, and you had to abide by the rules. That's all. You turned out the lights when you went out of a room. You cleaned up whatever you messed up. You picked up your toys. You had rules, and they came from Mom. Well, why? Because there's some kind of order that has to characterize a little child as that child grows up. So, some rules have built-in punishment. Other rules do not. Don't touch that hot stove. No, I do what I want to. That's the way it is. That some rules have consequences. Just when you break it, that's just it. If I put my head down and I run into that wall, there's consequences. Some rules don't have consequences like that. So we need guidance. We have to have some kind of guidance in our lives. Where does that guidance come from? With a lot of people, it's society. It's our culture. It may be what is legal. You know, there are a number of things that are legal that are immoral. There are a number of things that are legal that are wrong. So the laws of the land are not the things that decide rights and wrongs. Not just the laws, but society in general. When I was growing up, view did not talk about two people living together and not being married. That happened some, but almost everybody really frowned on that. Hey folks, just in case you hadn't noticed, it's just about 100% accepted in our society today. I've told you, some of you, about a young man, a young lady who were in a gathering of people, and they were all introducing themselves, you know, and it came to this young man, and he said, well, my name is so-and-so, and this is my girlfriend. And then he chuckled, and he said, we're living in sin. So you see, society accepts some things that God doesn't accept. But the pressures of society are so enormous that everybody's doing it. Well, no, everybody's not doing it. Well, everybody I know is doing it. And so you pick these things out, and if you like it, go ahead and do it. Or, as it put a different way, try it. You'll like it. So what I like has become the test of what's right for me. Now, what's right for me might not be right for Scott. What's right for Rudy might not be right for Jesse. No, folks. When we talk about rights and wrongs, we have to be relating these things to God. Now, why can't I just generate for myself a good set of moral, ethical rules? Well, there are a number of problems with that. The things that I allow are probably going to be the things that I want to do. And they'll be different than things you allow, because your allowances will be things that you want to do. So our desires play an important role in what we view as right or wrong without God. And somebody else says, well, what is socially acceptable? Well, that's a problem too, because from one generation to another, society changes like everything. And so what do? Do we just kind of go along with the crowd, go along with the tide? Well, that's what most people, well, many people, let's say. That's what many people do in their lives. They kind of go along with what society approves or what society disapproves. So you see, that's not a very good rule. It just doesn't work. It might work for a while for some people, but it's just not going to be something you can hang your hat on. Okay. The only kind of ethics and morals that I can ever bring into my life with any kind of consistency at all is where the rules are external from me. I don't make the rules. So when I'm a little kid, my mom and dad made the rules. Why did they do that? Because I wasn't capable of making the rules. But for some reason, when I grow up, I think I'm capable of just about anything, so I make my own rules. Instead, God says He makes the rules. Now, in this statement in Proverbs, trust the Lord with all of your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. This word understanding in Proverbs is used many times as kind of a synonym for wisdom. Do not lean on your own conclusions, your own wisdom. your own understanding. Why not? Because Rudy's will be different from mine, and mine will be different from his, and his will be different from hers, and so we have anarchy. What we need are rules that apply to all of us equally. That has to come externally. That has to come from some other source. Now, we don't like for that to come from the government. We don't like for that to come from an external source that is really human. It's just like I am. There's something about God here that's extremely important to us. And that is that the rules that God has made, the restrictions that God has given to us, are not just restrictions, folks. They're more than that. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on this because I already know what it would be like. What if I said to you, how many of you would like to have a happy life? Everybody's hand would go sky high, wouldn't it? We all want that. Okay. Here's where God comes in. When I was a little boy, I didn't like some of the rules, okay? Now, when you were a little boy or a little girl, you didn't like some of the rules either. That's just the way things are. When I grew up, I look back on some of these things and say, wow, boy, Mom and Dad knew what they were doing to restrict me from that, to keep me from doing that. Now that I'm a man, I reach back into my past and I see the importance of a lot of those things. Now, what does this have to do with God? Just this. God has placed restraints on us. God has said, don't. God has also said, do. He has placed restraints on us. He's placed demands on us. Now, did he just reach up in the sky one day and say, well, you know, I think we ought to demand so-and-so out of human being. Let me write that down. That's a commandment. And he thinks of another one. He thinks, well, yeah, maybe we ought to do that too. Write down another one here. No, folks, he didn't do that way. Here really is what he did. God wants you and me to be happy. He wants us to be productive. And the law that he's given us are designed for that. The restrictions are designed for our good. For example, when you look in the Bible and it says, thou shalt not steal, well, that's a restriction. I don't know about you, but I never have robbed a bank. I never have shoplifted. There are a number of things like this about stealing I never have done. That doesn't mean I'm such a good guy. It just means that I have come to realize that that's good for me. That's good for me. Killing, adultery, coveting, these things that God has restricted us on. Do not. They're all for our good. And when we abide by these things, and I'm not talking about just the Ten Commandments, I'm talking about all of God's laws. If I abide by them, I might not like it at the time, but I look back and I see the wisdom of doing the things the way God said. Now, there are just all kinds of applications of that. This says to us then that God and his laws, God and his rules, that's the foundation stone of right living. Right living is the foundation of happiness. Now, it doesn't mean just because I'm right, I'm going to have a lot of money. It doesn't mean that just because I'm living right, I'm not going to be a poor man or a pauper. It doesn't mean that because I'm living right that people are going to like me. It doesn't mean because I'm living right that I am going to go to the head of the class. But it does mean this. It means that my sense of well-being, my sense of happiness, my sense of belonging to God, my sense of loving other people, these things that are uppermost in the moral, ethical realm, when I abide by those things, I will be a happier person. Folks, there's just no doubt about that. Now, as we conclude, let's stop and think for a moment about what is happiness. Well, to some people, happiness is doing what I want to do. To other people, happiness is having a lot of fun, going from one party to the next party. To some people, happiness is not having responsibility. But the problem is that each of these puts the emphasis on me. This is what I desire, this is what I like, this is what I want. God knows that when the emphasis is on me, I make big mistakes, big time. And so God treats me like his child. He basically says to me, Jack, you may be smart, but you're not as smart as I am. He said, Jack, I know some things about you that you don't even know about yourself. Jack, I know some things that are good for you that you think are bad for you. Oh, I can remember the greatest disappointment in my life turned out to be the greatest blessing that ever came to me. There are so many things here that we cannot see. There's so many elements of life that we cannot foresee. God knows. And so happiness is something that comes to us not because we're seeking it, but because we find it in Christ. And when we find it in Christ, it's a kind of happiness that will not go away. The Greek language is a very interesting language. And there's some expressions in the Greek language, and all languages are this way. There's some expressions in the Greek language that you can't just translate into English and come up with the same real thought, you know. You've got to maybe write a whole paragraph to explain what this really means. You ever heard of the Beatitudes? Blessed are the poor in spirit. Well, this is a funny thing. We don't have a word in English. Perhaps you folks have it in Spanish. I don't know. We don't have a word in English that just exactly says what that word what that word blessed is translated from. It means, and I looked this up in Greek lexicons and stuff like this, and ran into something that was very interesting to me. The word means a kind of happiness that can never be taken away from you. No matter who dies, no matter what trouble you get in, no matter how much money you lose, there's nothing that takes away that happiness. And most people say, boy, I'll be so happy when I get a new car. I'll be so happy when I get new clothes. I'll be so happy when we can move into a new house. I'll be so happy when and if and so forth like this, you know. No, all of that kind of happiness can be taken away from you. Blessed is a kind of happiness that can never be taken away. When I was reading on this, I read something about the origin of the word. And in the origin of the word, there was the idea. It was a pagan. It's a Greek word, and it came from paganism. But the idea was let's use a word that expresses the tranquility and the happiness that the gods have. Plural on that the gods have. Nobody can ever take that away. And so they came up with this word, which is translated blessed. You see, that's what happiness is. And that originates with God. That comes from God. It doesn't come from parties. It doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from power. It doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from God. And God basically says to us, hey, you know what? You gotta abide by the rules. If you don't abide by the rules, you violate the rules, you lose a little piece of that happiness, of that blessedness. And so what is the foundation of this whole thing of right living? Folks, it's God. God needs to be number one in your life, in my life. God needs to direct me, guide me. I need to be willing to yield to Him. A number of you were not here this morning, so I want to repeat something I said this morning because I think it fits right into this. My wife and I, my family, whole family, we used to go camping a lot. And one night it was just black, dark. I mean, it was just really, it was a night when, the moon was not out, the stars weren't out, everything was covered over with clouds and all, and we were way out in the wilderness, and we got in the car. Windows were up. Turned the light on in the car. You know what happened? Every time we looked in one of the glasses, the windshield, back window, any of the windows, what did we see? We always saw ourselves. We always saw ourselves, yeah. Yeah, just, I look in I couldn't see anything outside at all. There was no light out there. All the light was all in here. And then we turned the light off on the inside of the car, turned it on the outside of the car. Then we could see. I thought about that and I thought, this is a problem of life. We always turn the light on the inside. God says, turn the light off on the inside, turn the light on the outside. Get your mind off yourself. Get your mind on God. If you do that, you will see so much in the world. You'll see so much of God that you'll realize that keeping the light on the inside prevents you from appreciating and seeing and enjoying the blessed relationship with your Heavenly Father.